Hello, New York. My name is Paul Song, and I live in LA, but I was actually born in Queens. I'm the son of immigrants who fled Korea during the war. My parents would eventually meet in New York and get married at Riverside Cathedral in Upper Manhattan. And my mom would go on to graduate from Columbia Teachers College with a degree in early childhood education. Her very first job was working for the late, great Shirley Chisholm in Harlem as an early childhood educator. For those of you who don't know, Miss Chisholm was the very first African-American woman elected to Congress. And in 1972, she became the first African-American woman ever to run for President of the United States. Her motto was that she was unbought and unbossed. And my mom says that Bernie Sanders reminds her of Shirley Chisholm because he too is unbought and unbossed. And that is why my 84-year-old mom is supporting Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. I come here before you as an oncologist who has seen far too many of my patients go bankrupt strictly because they got sick. Nearly 50 years ago, the Reverend Martin Luther King said, of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. And while the Affordable Care Act did some good things, it has not done enough. And sadly, we still have an immoral and unjust healthcare system where 29 million people remain uninsured and 45,000 people die each year strictly because they lack coverage. We have a system where 1 out of 3 people with insurance will delay seeking care because they cannot afford the copays and deductibles. And we have a system where 33 million people in the United States will stop taking their medications because they simply cost too much. We have a system that refuses to provide coverage for our undocumented brothers and sisters. So I plead with you all, please do not believe the bullshit that our healthcare system is okay. Please do not believe that we only need minor tweaks. The status quo sucks, it's unacceptable, and people are dying needlessly because of it. Like Martin Luther King, Senator Sanders is the only candidate who recognizes health care as a human right, and that Medicare for all is truly the only solution. Now, I just want to point out one thing. Some of you may know that I come from a divided family. My wife and her sister and many of my loved ones are supporting Secretary Clinton. A few years ago, my sister-in-law was one of the journalists that was stuck in North Korea. And it was actually President Clinton who went to North Korea and brought her home safely. Now, I have tremendous respect for the President and Secretary Clinton, and while they helped my family, I felt I needed to support the candidate that will help every single family in the United States. Now, Secretary Clinton has said Medicare for all will never happen. Well, I agree with Secretary Clinton that Medicare for all will never happen if we have a president who never aspires for something greater than the status quo. Medicare for all will never happen if we continue to elect corporate Democratic whores who are beholden to Big Pharma and the private insurance industry instead of us. But Senator Sanders rightfully recognizes that he cannot do this alone. It first starts with us electing him president and ends with us voting out every corporatist Democrat and replacing them with Bernie-crats. Finally, I just want to remind you about the 1969 New York Mets. Going into the final month of the season, they were 9.5 games behind the Chicago Cubs. The press called the Cubs inevitable, and no one gave the New York Mets any chance whatsoever. Well, as you know, not only did the Mets come back to win the division, but they would shock the Baltimore Orioles to become the improbable world champs. And their motto was, "You gotta believe." Well, New York, we all gotta believe that Bernie will win. And that begins this Tuesday when we come together to reject the status quo, reject the bullshit, and win New York. Let's go, everyone. Thank you.